What's GameStop short interest at right now? I think the report just came out on the 9th. Thought it was somewhere between 40 and 50%.
Yeah, which is still high traditionally, right? Anything above 30% is like a high short float.
Now,
the fact that it got over 100% was ridiculous.
My question to you then is, how accurate are those numbers? I know that they're delayed. I mean, the numbers that come out on the 9th are actually from like the 29th of January, so there's like a 2-week delay in there already.
Well, like this whole thing with having to report these positions, it's an honorary system, but it is also legally binding. As a large spec trader, you do have to report these obligations. And, this short float interest is a combination of everyone that's short. It's not just the hedge fund industry. It's other people who open shorts. So it's reliable to an extent. But when I see it as 50%, it isn't. The exciting thing about any stock having a short float over 100% is that theoretically, there will never be enough shares to close that short. The price could get to infinity, right? Because if you send everyone chasing to close the short, they can't cover 122 apples worth if there's only 100.
Yep.
So I think that's where the excitement got in. Like, hey, let's actually take this thing to the moon. And it's that 122 figure. You look at how that's possible. That's the brokerage industry to blame, right? Like, what they do is naked short selling. They'll actually allow somebody to short sell without finding a client who already owns that in their book. So when GME started to ramp up and everyone started to get excited, some people wanted to short it still early on in its rally up. And they call their broker, and their broker says, you know what? I don't have anyone that has it that I could lend it to you for a short position. But my God, I could make a lot of interest on this. I'll tell you what, I'll just let you open a naked short. And that's how you create shares out of thin air. And the SEC is now looking at, let's go there and start to hit these Reddit guys. Like, this is a coordinated pump and dump. Let's see if there's any legal action. Let's get that deep effing value guy. Let's call him up for a testimony. But we're not talking about what actually created this as a short squeeze. This started as a good investment. Buy it into the retail season, get some consoles coming out, let's make some money. But now it's like, we got to ask the questions of the brokerage industry too. How are you lending out so many shares that you didn't even have? We got to point fingers.
I think that actually kind of leads into my next question then, which is about the fails to deliver. And seeing things floating around on there on Reddit about there being a high number of fails to deliver on GameStop. So my understanding is that is the number of shares that were sold but could not be delivered, I think. Could you explain that, like what that actually is?
They were naked shorted but never covered.
Exactly. So it's like you're naked short, and so what ends up happening is you have your clients who are short positions who then want to cover their short, and they're looking to buy it, but now you got to find somebody willing to sell it to you. And so as a brokerage, you're in what we call in the industry an undisclosed short position, which means yes, your clients have these trades, but you as a brokerage now have underlying risk. You have liquidity potential issues that can happen. And so they're out there trying. If you guys read on how the hedge funds actually close out their shorts, I thought that was genius. We could chat about that in a second, but this is where brokerages end up being net short on their whole book. So if you think about how they do business, you have Peter who owns 100 shares of Apple. And you got Larry. Larry's absolutely nuts. He wants to short Apple. So what happens is Peter lends the shares to Larry for the short. And so you got Peter 100% position long, Larry 100 share position short, but they're offset because Larry owes the shares to Peter. They're tied 1-to-1. Net effect of the brokerage is 0. But that's not the situation they put themselves in, right? And I think that's where regulation could look at it and be like, how did you guys get yourself in these undisclosed and naked short positions? How often do you do this, right? And let's stress test this, because if you're going to run and operate on this business model, you could have caused one hedge fund to go out, and that's not a problem. If you're taking risk in the market, and if you're taking a lot of risk, you should be able to blow out. It's like, that serves you right.
Yeah.
Right? It's the rules of capitalism. You want to go do something boneheaded, you got to pay the price. But if it's something systemic that brings them 1, then 2, then 3, and then people who are working 9 to 5 are the ones. Is that me?
What?
I'm hearing like a static. I'm sorry.
No, I don't hear anything.
Oh, I'm sorry. You might want to put an edit there. 41 minutes. So,
Yep.
I'm sorry. So what I was saying here is that, like, you know, if it's just one hedge fund that went out of business, great. You know, I'm all for it. But it had the potential to hurt the people who are our parents or grandparents who are relying on the stability of the market for their passive income portfolios.
Right.
And I think that's what has to be looked at from a regulator standpoint. You know, you look at that the deep fucking value guy on Reddit. I think there's going to be some interesting situations there too, because one thing people don't realize is he was actually licensed as an advisor at the time that he was promoting this on the forum. And so,
yeah, I did see something about that.
It's one thing to be just like John from like the trucking business talking about on Reddit. It's another thing to be a licensed professional in the industry, because when you do get licensed, you go through testing, you go through like ethics, regulatory stuff, you know, training by compliance. There's a process to it. And so I think they're going after the wrong people, number one. But number two, there's got to be a review in how these brokers were able to create out of thin air 22% extra shares than there were.
You are listening to an entertainment program put together by a company called Financial Ineptitude. Anything said on this show is not an endorsement or professional advice. Would you really want to tell a court of law you were suing us because you thought taking financial advice from two idiots on a podcast put out by Financial Ineptitude was a good idea? Really? Clown hat smiley face.